As the dance reached a crescendo of frenetic motion, there was a low, deep tolling, as of some great bell. The toll shuddered out, causing the glass in her hand to quiver in sympathy. Trays rattled and slaves quailed, sinking to their knees. The harlequins broke apart, dispersing swiftly like a flock of startling birds. Sliscus made his entrance in grand style. Clad in shimmering raiment made from the glistening hide of some alien beast, he descended from on high. His sliff bodyguards undulated after him, their progress slow. The steps had not been designed with serpentine bodies in mind. Sliscus quickly outpaced them, moving with light-footed grace.
They say the harlequins taught him to dance,
Vindrak murmured, watching him.
and that he has done so under a grinning mask for the unknowing entertainment of the highest of the high.
She glanced at Malice.
Have we seen him, I wonder?
Malice studied the Corsair. Sliscus had not changed much since their last encounter. He was still the same serpent. Tall and regal, as only a scion of the semi-extinct noble houses could be, with sharp, high-planed features. His hair had been bound into hundreds of thin plaits, each wrapped in gold wire. The plates splayed out across his shoulders and cascaded down his back and across his bare chest. A pair of swords hung from the stacked half-sheaves of the ornate gem-studded harness he wore over his shimmering coat. The weapons were old and cruel-looking, their pale blades curved and hooked like talons, and they rasped against one another. The gem in the harness flickered strangely as the light struck it. With a start, Malice realized that they were spirit stones. She laughed softly in delight, wondering if the stones were occupied. If so, she hoped the souls within were enjoying the view. Holstered opposite the swords was a heavy liquefier pistol with ivory framework and a gilded barrel. The pistol, like the swords, was old and radiated the malice of ages. Fingers heavy with rings tapped against the pistol's grip, and Sliscus's other hand rested atop the pommel of the uppermost sword. "I have arrived," he said, his voice a soothing purr. "Now let the revelries begin." Duke Sliscus took in the crowd at a glance, savoring their adulation and envy. The barely restrained rage of jealous Comorites was like a palate cleanser after the unsubtle emotions he had been forced to subsist on. So many permutations of desire and resentment, and all for him. "My friends," he said, spreading his arms, "be welcome. All that I have is yours. Enjoy yourselves to the fullest. I ask only that you leave behind a little of the happiness that you bring." A smattering of applause greeted his words, and he had known it would. As he studied the crowd, noting the familiar faces, he wondered which of them would be lost to the pleasure gardens. He hoped it was someone interesting this time. Before he could continue, a voice cried out, "Death to the serpent!" A moment later, a splinter pistol cracked. The shot struck the force shield surrounding him, and the thin shards of crystal shattered across an uneven curve. He chuckled. "Oh, are we getting this out of the way early? How thoughtful." Several guests laughed. Others drew back, eager to witness the confrontation. It wasn't a real party until someone tried to kill the host. There was a disturbance at the back of the crowd as his attackers forced their way towards him. An Archon and his retinue, 3 Caliberlite warriors, likely favored, if not trusted Dracons. Sliscus recognized the burgundy armor and flowing azure silks of the warriors instantly. "Is that you, Zomel? I thought I recognized your distinctive squeal. Still angry about the Tesseract, I take it." Sliscus waved Sleg and his coilkin back as he descended the final steps. "I can't blame you. It is very nice." He gestured about him for emphasis. An appreciative titter ran through his guests. "Thief!" Zomil spat. He was a pinch-faced trueborn, haughty and arrogant. He and his cluster of warriors wore the sigil of the Cabal of the Black Heart proudly, as if their allegiance to the supreme overlord of Comora was all the protection they needed. And in most cases, it was. But not here. Vect had no power here, whatever a fool like Zomil might think. The Archon spat on the floor and gestured with his smoking pistol. "I name you thief and traitor, Trevelli of Sliscus. I name you coward." He holstered his weapon and let his hand fall to the sword sheathed on his hip. Asdrubal Vex sends his regards, Corsair. Will you answer his challenge? A murmur swept through the crowd. Sliskus smiled. Asdrubal sent you? How considerate. He let his hands drift towards the swords on his hip. Come then, let us commence. Before the roasted hemivore cutlets grow cold. Zomil snarled an order, and his warriors drew their blades and surged forwards. There was another murmur at this. It was bad form to involve others in a direct challenge, but neither Zomil nor his master were known for caring much about form, and in the end, results were all that really mattered. Sliskus sprang to meet them, drawing his swords. The blades were light in his hand, and the pale steel was lined with thin filaments of red. The psycho-vampiric circuitry woven into the metal could unleash the vitality from anything the blades bit into. He spun the swords, indulging his sense of melodrama, but as the first of his assailants reached him, he was already moving. Not to kill, but simply to incapacitate. He twisted away from a lunge and chopped through the back of the warrior's legs. His blade easily bit through armor and flesh, and the crippled warrior collapsed with a gasp of pain. Sliskus tore his blade free, as he used its mate to parry a blow. Without slowing, he dealt his second attacker a deceptively gentle blow on the shoulder. As the second reeled, the third pounced. Sliskus caught her blow on his crossed blades. He jerked his swords apart, chopping through her own. She stumbled back, and he pursued. His blades licked out, knees, elbows, thighs, shoulders, and she fell with a wail. The second warrior cursed and sprang at his back. Sliskus reversed his blades and thrust them to meet him. The weight of the dying fighter crashed against him, and Sliskus shuddered as he drank in his opponent's death agonies. He tore his blades free as Zomil tried to capitalize on the momentary distraction. Invigorated by the pain of the warriors he had wounded, Sliskus easily avoided the thrust. Zomil was not quite the swordsman he fancied himself. He was a better bootlick by far. Sliskus wondered what had given him the courage to attempt so bold a murder. Maybe it wasn't courage, so much as stupidity. How he must dislike you, Zomil, he said as he stepped around the Archon. His blade licked out lazily, and Zomil parried it with desperate speed. Sending you here, like this? I did wonder, you know. The last time I invited him to a party, he sent mandrakes. They made quite the mess. But this is more in the way of an apology. Zomil bared his teeth and attacked. Sliskus ducked and twisted, evading the darting blade in a swirl of robes. I wonder, is this punishment, perhaps, for losing the Tesseract in the first place? It was a gift, after all. Bad form to lose a gift from the tyrant. You stole it! Zomil snarled. Yes, from you. So whose fault is it, truly? Whom does he hold responsible? Sliskus parried a clumsy blow and stepped past Zomil, slicing through his calf. Zomil sank to one knee with a groan. Sliskus turned and swept the tip of a blade across Zomil's wrist, cutting tendons. Zomil dropped his blade. The Archon threw himself forward, clawing for his splinter pistol. Sliskus didn't give him a chance to fire. He leapt and pinned Zomil's hand to the floor. He kicked the pistol away and smiled down at his would-be assassin. I think we both know the answer to that. Zomil gaped up at him. Sliskus waited for him to curse, to protest, something. Instead, Zomil whimpered as the psycho-vampiric circuitry did its work. Sliskus frowned, suddenly bored of the whole affair. He sighed and thrust his other blade through the wounded Archon's eye, ending the game abruptly. Well, that was disappointing. Still, no reason to let it ruin the party. He nudged the body out of the way with his foot and looked around. Eat, drink, my friends, drink, make merry. For tomorrow, you might wind up like poor Zomil there. Laughter swept the gardens as his guests set to enjoying themselves. Treveliev Sliskus is the Drukhari Corsair Lord of the Sky Serpents. Known as the Serpent by his fellow raiders, this vainglorious marauder allows for the destruction of any and all allies as collateral damage should they achieve his ambitions. Debased, amoral, and dressed to impress, despite the bloodshed wrought by his actions, this self-styled Duke fled the political intrigue of Commorragh with free cabals stolen from its domains in order to pillage the galaxy for great spoils. Eking out an existence of power-hungry pillaging for millennia, his reputation for slaughtering an entire hive city due to the nobility's mispronunciation of his gaudy titles belies his narcissistic psychopathy. Stealing a Tesseract pleasure garden from a pawn of Supreme Overlord Asdrubal Vect before departing the Dark City, leaving much of Low Comera in flames, this preening vagabond cares not for rulership beyond the hedonistic delights it might bequeath. Never wearing the same attire twice, and demanding his tailors to incorporate remains from his recent kills to be added to his panoplies, his gorging on poisoned foods bolsters his immunity to toxins, whilst he delights in writing sonnets upon the flesh of his captives. Regaled by the Comoran nobility as a true exemplar of exiled Drukhari, his known exploits would reach their zenith during their tale of the Serpent and the Jackal Wolf. The only foe of the anarchic Space Wolf, Lucas, to ever outwit the guile of this jokester Astartes. Only thanks to the genetic pedigree of the Wolf King did the Space Marines survive their duel within Sliscus's flagship, the Incessant Agony, as Treveliev claimed one of his hearts as a trophy from their duel. Remembering Lucas as a worthy foe, as scars on his face served as a reminder of the acidic spit wrought from the grin of the trickster, both adversaries in their own way reveled in their recollection of their battle, which is regaled to this day by Astartes and Drukhari alike.